people.
Yeah.
And I, look, man, like you stood up at a time where people were attacking you, and they were attacking me too, right? Because I didn't buy into any of it.
Yeah.
And I stood up against a lot of nonsense, and we were right.
Yeah.
We're both right? They're trying to go after your gym. They're trying to keep your gym closed, because you weren't going along with it. And especially where you are here in California, it's magnified even more.
Yeah.
Right. And it's crazy. But, like like in 2020 is the first year we did the Shaw Classic, right? Because all the contests were shut down. Everything was banned, or, all this. Right. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to clear out my gym. I'm going to fly all these guys in. We're going to do this contest. Right. And I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
Right. And, it has turned, like that, for example, has turned into something much bigger. It's grown and grown and grown. But standing up for what you believe in, right? Because I had done my own research. I looked at everything, and I didn't just buy into what the media was saying or whatever. And if anybody was open enough to look into that, you could see it. It was all there. Everything was there, right? And instead, it was this, like, you're going along with what you're told, right? Versus standing on your own 2 feet and saying, well, this is my opinion, and I can back it up because I've done my own research.
Yeah.
Right. And that was, that's important. It's very, very important. And I think that especially men in general now have gotten too weak.
Yeah.
Right. They have there's this weakness that's creeping through. Like, as a man, you should be capable of having your own opinion and be able to back that opinion up. And even if you're in a room of people that disagree, you don't need to go along with it. Right. Yeah. And you should be strong enough to do that. But is it easy? No, it's not easy, but you should be willing to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the difference maker. And I think in society, it's so easy to twist what somebody says, whether that's a politician or anybody, really, right? Like, let's chop it up. Let's make it sound like this. Let's take that word out. We'll make sure so it's all out of context. But then it's like, well, here, look at this. This is what was said, right? Yeah. But you didn't get the full story. So now your opinion, like you said, is based on this person looking good. Well, I didn't look at any of the past of him, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. You got your shirt off. You look good. I'm going to listen to what you say, even though you might not have it. Or this politician said this, and I see this video, but that's really not the truth, but I want you to believe it. So now here's what you're told. So unless you're willing to critically think, maybe do a little bit of research on your own, you'll just take what it is.
You're just a sheep,
and
which is interesting because whether or not you believe this, we talk about the P-demi, because I don't really like to say the full word because I feel like sometimes you get censored.
100%, bro.
If you take that whole situation, and whether you're on this side or that side, and you do the inverse, the most interesting thing about that whole situation, besides like how, in my opinion, it was, is that whatever side you're on, both sides should be very afraid with the fact that if you didn't agree with what someone else said and you didn't just take it for what it was, you were a bad person.
Totally.
But almost both ways, right?
Yep.
So it's like the side that's like, we're standing up and saying, no, this is like, you guys are bad. And then the other side saying like, you guys are stupid. Like, you guys are bad. The problem with that whole circumstance, like government pushed, is like, just imagine whatever side you're on, it's flipped. Because the reality is it could be at any point. At what point when they go, hey, this is the narrative now, or this is the thing now, if you're not willing to look at something and make your own decision on it, and you're just doing what someone else says, that's insane.
Yeah.
Because that could switch at any moment, where this side now is, let's say this side has more power. It's like the right side, because in that time it was the left side, whatever you want to call it. And then it switched, and now everyone's like, no, you guys are stupid. It's like, that's what I never understood, was that whether or not you were buying into whatever it was, and yes, people died and people got hurt, or people lost their lives and people lost their livelihoods, and so much stuff happened. The concept of like controlling it all, and like, you have to do this or you're going to lose your job, or you're going to lose, like, you can't go to school, or the fact that was able to be real should be very scary to everyone on all sides, because it could flip. And if you can't see that, you're stupid. And it's sad. It's sad that people just go, okay, he said it, I'm afraid. I got a grandma, like, I'm afraid. Of course, I get those things. But if you can't go a little further, then what happens when it flips and then you're on the other side of that and you're looking like an idiot to everyone, even though you're not?
Yep.
And then 4 years later, you realize, wait, this wasn't as crazy.
Yep.
And it's just like, imagine that in a different circumstance that's much more like, wait, could be worse.
Yes.
And then you're on the other side of it and you're just like, what the fuck? Everyone's just buying into this. Like, that's a scary concept.
I don't know how you feel, but I don't think people are truly that different, right?
Right,
Like,
that's my point.
I don't think they are, but the interesting part of it is, and you know, I've used this analogy, right? Like if you put ants in a jar, right? And let's just say you got black ants and red ants.
Yeah.
Right? They will coexist just fine in the jar until you shake the jar. Do you know that?
No. So then they fight each other?
Then they'll fight. Yep. But
Holy
yeah, that's true.
because just because of the like the genetic
they
makeup of
think
these.
they think it's the red ants or the black ants causing the problems, but whoever's shaking the jar is the problem, not
Yeah.
them, right? So like if you think, right, take bigger picture,
Fuck.
the world,
Yeah.
right? All of us could be fine, and there doesn't need to be all this division, but it's almost like what has been created with social media is I'm comfortable, or you know, whoever's comfortable, right? I can hide behind my screen and say whatever I want to say and put it out there, right? And then, you know, now you can get into the bots or whatever else that's pushing the narrative.
Yeah.
And then you're cutting things up to be said a certain way. And so now if you say something, I'm going to hate you. I'm not going to listen to you or have a conversation with you. I'm going to hate you
Yeah.
because of what you said, even though there's probably some merit or some common ground that we could find. And I think it's important to continue having conversations. But if you get out in the real world, right? Like I haven't seen any of this personally. And I've done a lot of different things, different situations where where there's people from all different backgrounds, man, all different walks of life, you know, all different colors, whatever, right? And there is common ground. People are good, like across the board. I still believe people are good, man. It's just that
Yeah.
when you are fed this nonsense and you start to believe it, now it's like, well, I have to hate you. Why do you? No. You don't need to hate because you're told something. You know, if you were to get in a real room and have a real conversation, I guarantee there's some type of common ground. Yeah, are you potentially going to disagree? That's okay. But it used to be okay to have a disagreement and still have respect.
What happened to that?
This is the problem.
The internet?
Well, I think the internet. I think it's the screen, man. Because now I'm comfortable. Let's just say I disagree with something. I'm comfortable writing a nasty message to you or making a nasty comment, and I don't have any threat coming back from you either.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no like, well, I'm going to say this to your face, because nobody has the courage to do that.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't. Whereas it used to be, at least for me when I was growing up, if you had a disagreement with somebody, you went and talked. Right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about it. Yeah. Okay. Maybe it came to us fighting.
Right.
But then you would fight and it was done.
Yeah.
Like it's just done. You're done. And
Yeah.
that's it. Right. And there's still respect. And honestly, sometimes you could have a disagreement with somebody and they become your best friend. Like you work it out that way. Right. And I'm not saying it needs to come to fighting or anything, but once the talking stops, now this hate and division comes in. And
Yeah.
and I personally just don't believe that people are that different or they're that not aligned. Like I think most people should look at it like we're Americans, right?
Yeah.
Americans. And there's not this left or right or gay or straight or black or white or whatever, right? Like it's not that. It's just we're collectively Americans. You know, because if somebody were to attack our country, they're not going to single out, well, okay, you're on the left, you're on the right, I'm only going after you. No. We're all in it together, man.
Yeah, and
like you
that's-
all got to stand. It's like united we stand, divided we fall, right?
Yeah.
And I think if more people would look at it like that, like there doesn't need to be all this hate, because once you have the hate and division, now there's a problem.
Yeah.
right?
Well, there's multiple problems, I think, and it is because there's two things that I'll identify as like money and power, right? So money, for example, in relationship to even these content creators now who like have spaces where they're saying, or whether they're left or right, and they're saying, oh, this is what we think. Oh, this is what there's money being created from garnering this attention from this side or that side to say they're stupid staying open during the pandemic. And I'm saying I'm right for saying open dependent. And like,
Correct.
I can generate income because people go, oh yeah, this guy's standing up for this. I'm going to support him. That other person who I would consider a tool for being a piece of and saying like, you should close down gyms, would be also garnered some sort of money or financial benefit, whether it's AdSense or something that they're selling. Cause they're saying they're touting whatever's wanting to be touted. Right. Or vice versa, wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's interesting because then these intentions they're not true in like what it really is. Sometimes people do things because they're just looking for the financial benefit. And then it gets crazy because that same concept exists at the very top of like government and control and power and big businesses. It's like the thing that I never understood during this whole time was when people didn't recognize that like these companies, the vaccine companies are all for-profit businesses. It's not like they're nonprofit businesses that are doing this shit just because they care about people. They're making trillions of dollars, and you're not understanding that. Like, I never got this when they were like, the vaccine is free. Well, like, you got to take the vaccine, right? And it's like, no, it's a business that just made billions and billions and billions of dollars, and our tax money that you've already paid to the government is now giving it to this for-profit business.
Totally.
And who knows what politicians have their hands in those pockets. And it's like, what the are people not recognizing that? And I never understood that. I never understood that. And I never understood that, we talk about shaking the ant jar, and it's like, that's what's happening. And people then just take it in their own account to just go parrot this and parrot that back and forth at each other while they're just cashing the checks and being like, haha. And but then you have the little smaller, like the ants, us making the content, also cashing different checks, parroting like, I believe this and I believe that.
Sure.
Whether which one's right or wrong is kind of not the point in this conversation, but that's where it gets all tricky. It's the internet in connection with money and AdSense and ads, and then it's them doing the same at a higher level worth a lot more money. And then I just don't understand how people don't see that. And then they just go, this is it, instead of being like, wait, what's really happening?
Yeah. Well, and this is your ability to critically think.
Right. But I don't understand how it is not hard to go.
It's not.
Hey, does that business make money doing this? Hey, is that stuff actually free?
No.
It's not like rocket science.
No.
So that's what I don't get is like, are people just that stupid?
It's disturbing because all of that, what you just mentioned, is disturbing. It's disturbing to me, and I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's like I think that movie's called like An Ant's Life or something like that, right? Where it's ants, but the grasshoppers tell the ants what to do. Right?
Oh, dude, I love that movie.
Right?
Yeah, I love that movie.
But there's one ant that says, you know what? We don't need to collect all your food anymore. Go do it yourself. Right?
Yeah.
And they try to attack him. Then all the ants start standing together. And guess what?
When is that going to happen?
This
That's what I'm
is
saying.
this is
When
what
is that
we
going to
need.
happen?
Think of like if we're thinking of ourselves as ants, which is basically what, if you take this and apply it to our world, right? All the ants stand together. Guess what? The grasshoppers don't have a say anymore. At all.
I feel
Zero.
like the whole point is for that never to happen. That's like I'm not saying that's the point and that's what should happen. I feel like that's what is. That's
all you have to do is say no, right? And like for me, this is just one example, right? Like, okay, you're telling me to wear a mask. Well, I'm not wearing a mask, right? So I'm going to walk in. And I had people say that because what happened? I went to the grocery store. I didn't put one on.
Yeah.
Somebody going to come force me to put one on? No.
Yeah, I did that
Right?
too. Every single time.
But what happened, bro? I'm in there.
Yeah.
People are coming up to me and taking pictures. But what do they do when they take the picture? Take their mask off. They don't want to be wearing the mask. The overwhelming majority of people did not, right?
Yeah.
They were doing it just to comply. But it's a massive signal as a population that if they can force us to do that when you don't want to do it and you just go along with it because you don't want to rock the boat, right? People told me afterwards, you know what? I saw you in public not doing that, so then I stopped doing it too.
Yeah.
Right. So it just takes one person to stand up and start to do it. And then it's a trickle effect.
Yeah.
Right. But if we would have said collectively, you know what? Everybody doesn't want to wear one. We're not wearing one anymore. What would they have done?
Well, they instilled the fear.
Yeah.
That's why people go, oh, okay.
But again, where did that come from? And all this stuff is now unraveling now where it's like, well, there's a 6 foot spacing thing. Where did that come from? Oh, we don't even know. Right. Or you have to do this.
First off, I think it was 4 feet. Then it was 6. It was just just making.
Nobody can even say where it came from. There's no merit to that. There's nothing there. But it was all fear mongering for people, right? And look, when they put out, and a lot of the video stuff they put out was fake at the beginning, and it
Yeah.
did scare people, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't know. I didn't know at the beginning. Nobody did.
Yeah.
But that's when critical thinking needs to come into play and say, like, okay, wait a minute. What is this? Right? What is it actually?
How do you think you get people to be better critical thinkers? Like, what do you?
Well,
what can we fucking do?
I think talking like we are right now, and just saying to people that they need to have an open mind, right? Like you need to be able to stand for something, or you will fall for anything, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can't have your own thoughts and beliefs, that's what I think that maybe, and maybe it's the powers that be don't want that, right? So it's starting with the kids getting the participation trophies, and now you have a weaker society, especially weaker men,
Yeah.
right? And you need strong men to have a good society.
Yeah.
I truly believe that, right? Like men need to be capable of being men, right? And
Yeah.
standing up and standing on their own 2 feet. And if I say no, I'm not doing this, then you need to back that up. I'm willing to back it up. But again, you know, this is I think the bigger fear is if we are getting that weak, which I think we are,
Yeah.
right? How do we shift that so you have the ability to think, but also say, I'm not going to do this, right? And that's how I felt. That's how I truly felt. Is like I'm fighting, like in my mind, like I have 2 little boys, right? So I'm fighting for their right to be free when they're older, right? And I know that that's deep, right? Because I'm like, I'm not putting a mask on. I'm not doing this. I'm not playing your little charade at all.
Yeah.
But for me, like I want my boys to have a good world to live in when they're older too, right? And if we give up our freedom because it's just putting on a mask, right? To me, that was a massive deal,
Yeah.
bro. Massive. It's much bigger than people want to say. It's not that much of an inconvenience. Come do it.
Yeah.
No, bro, I'm not covering my face up. Like I'm not doing that. You're not telling me to do that. It's my right to breathe air the way I want to breathe air.
Yeah.
Right. And if I want to look at somebody and smile, I want to be able to do that. Right. Like I'm not playing your game, because also there's no merit in the mask.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't do anything. Right. But
yeah.
also I did a lot of research on that as well.
Yeah.
About masks and the effectiveness, even where masks started in the first place. Right. Like I looked into all of that because I was like, well, if there's merit, I would have gone along if it was like, it's
Also
actually
a
gonna keep me
massive
safe.
business.
Yes.
3M made a lot of money.
Then, you know, people talk about the world. Like think of the pollution that just those masks caused.
Yeah.
Right. But everybody wants to say, well, the world is green and I want to protect the world and all this. Right.
Right. The same side that also said that we should
Yeah.
wear masks is like,
Correct.
well, we also got to Gretchen, whatever the that girl's name is, like,
Yeah.
protect the world. And it's like,
Yes.
all right, well, what the are you
That's
doing?
what I think. That's
also
what's
the
so
idiot,
disturbing, yeah.
the insane about the mask to me that really just was like just a blatant thing that was like, how are people not recognizing this? Most people put on a mask who believed in masks would wear that same mask day after day, take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on, collecting germs from everywhere.
Gross. Yeah.
And also, the funniest part was that same concept I'm saying. Every single person, whether they believed in the thing or not, was like, yo, when I go to a restaurant, and when you go to the restaurant, because some restaurants were okay at some point,
Yep.
you had to take it off to go pee. Like, or excuse me, you had to take it off when you're eating, but you had to walk to your table. Like,
Dude.
you had to walk. That was, and they were all like, yeah, that is kind of stupid. I'm like, how do you not see then how the whole thing is stupid? Where it's like,
No.
if I wear a mask and I'm in my car or whatever, right? Or if I'm somewhere and I take it off and I throw it here, I do it and I take it off because I'm like eating and I put it on the table and I put, like, you're collecting germs everywhere.
Everywhere.
And you're just the whole
It's
point
disgusting
of the
if you
whole
really
point of
think
like
about it,
the mask is obsolete.
Yes.
So what the are you actually doing?
This is such a good point, man. Because it is mind blowing that people were okay with that. Like apparently it only hovers at 5 feet and above. So if you sit down at a table, you're cool. Take it off.
Also,
right?
it only spread in public jurisdictions because they didn't close down any federal jurisdictions, which would have been airports the entire time.
Yep.
And I was asking, I remember that was my biggest question. I'd ask the guys because they would come try to shut me down every single day.
Sure.
And I would ask them, I'd say, well, how come the airports are still open? They go, well, we're public. We're in the public section.
Yeah.
We don't know about that's federal jurisdiction. So I'm like, so it doesn't spread in federal jurisdictions, what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we'll have to ask like a higher up. And I was like, okay, there's no answers here. You guys are insane.
No.
Like, I'm not shutting this.
No, don't.
So it's
And-
just
and
like-
but you still, you again, man, you were willing to stand on your own 2 feet. And I respected that. I said that to you when I came out during all of it going on, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that says a lot about you in my mind. And if you look back, and it's not this situation now where, okay, it's very easy after the fact to say, oh, guess what? I was right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that, because then what does that do? That creates more division. So it's like, well, somebody that was so firmly planted in the ground that like, I need to wear a mask and I need to get the vaccine and I got to comply. And like, if you're not doing this, you're killing grandmas and whatever, right?
Right.
That person, it's a difficult thing for that type of person to open their mind up and say, you know what? God, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And like, in all fairness, I'm sure that if somehow, not that it was going to happen, and I'm not saying that, but like if for example, you were keeping the gym open and for whatever reason, I was like, gosh, this is really bad. Like I can objectively see that this is really causing a problem here. Not that it would have, but right, to flip
Yeah.
it on its head a little bit. I'm sure you would have said, you know what, man, I screwed up.
100%.
Right. And I would have said the same. Like
Yeah.
because I looked into all of it, bro, like a lot.
Yeah,
Because
me
I
too.
do that. Like it was not, whatever I was doing and saying was not based on just a, like an emotional response.
Yeah.
It was like I had put a lot of thought into whatever I did and whatever I said, right? And how I did it and what I wanted to do, because it's just the way that I do things, So I'm sure you did the same. And it's just those people. And again, it's not that like I would ever say I dislike or hate somebody that was so firm in their beliefs on one side. It's still willing to break down that barrier, have a conversation with them, and still be cool,
Yeah.
right? Like it's all right. Like, but again, it comes back to this hate, right? Like now I have to hate you, and now I'm going to hate you because you kept your gym open and you
Yeah.
were ultimately right. Like it was,
No, it 100% goes both ways, and I think even now it's up to, because if we're talking about politically on the spectrum, right? People on the right are now like, haha, you idiots, we told you.
Yeah.
It's also our duty to also, if we're expecting them to have these sort of left or whatever, to have the conversations with us where they're more like kind of forgiving or like understanding of our perspective or point of view. It's also up to us to now go to not reprimand and make these people feel like
yeah.
But that was the thing that I didn't like during it. I was like, everyone over here was like, you're an idiot, you're a piece of shit, you're killing grandmas. And I'm like, wait, what the are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it's because then now you go, well, it started here so that everyone feels like we have to go back. Like that's
Totally.
So the mass is like, yeah, we got to say you because you were saying us.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're going in circles.
Yeah.
And
could
guess
be-
what?
Yeah.
The mother grasshoppers are like, you idiots.
You're playing right.
We
into
gotcha.
it. Yeah, you're playing. You're
Keep it
playing
up,
the-
idiots.
Yeah.
It-
And
and
this is where you have to just be, again, it's
Yeah.
be willing to be open minded, but also be the bigger person. Where it's like I don't need to necessarily play like get down and play that game.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like, hey, I just wish people would open their minds, man, like a little bit more in the world, and just again, the difference isn't there. It's just not. I wish that people could see that. And if you're in person talking to somebody, just get off of social media especially if you're going down that rabbit hole, and go have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Like if you could do that, and maybe even seek out somebody that maybe is a different opinion
Opposite
than you.
perspective. Yeah.
And say like, hey, I'm curious about this. Can you talk to me about this?
Yeah.
Right. Rather than just being so rooted in that, and then that hate and division comes. Right. The world would be a much better place if we could just talk and
they're
and
playing
respect
on
each
they're
other.
just playing on people's basic sort of emotional like ego responses, which is like that's a whole different conversation of like how, because now we're talking about like if we talk about that, the thing I just said is like how do you get someone to look into themselves and look into their ego? Not that you shouldn't have an ego, but like look into what it is and like why you're doing these things, which is way deeper and way more complicated and like a complete life sort of time that like you go through these different phases of where you are as a human and what you know and what you understand. Because that's the thing that like you can't just go, hey, snap out of it. It's like this is a life learn perspective that like people, they're not just going to be able to go like, I'll let it go.
Sure.
So that's why it's so much more complicated. Where it's like now we're talking about it like a sort of like a different spiritual, existential, like, hey, where are you at in your life and what are you willing to listen to and understand?
Yeah.
And so it's like you could talk about this in circles all day.
Yeah.
But it's like, at what point are people ready to really hear it and listen?
Sure. I felt like, did you ever watch the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Of course.
Right.
Incredible.
So do you remember everybody was drinking whatever it was out of that skull, the blood, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like you're in a trance,
Yeah.
right? And you're just blindly following, you're blindly doing, right? All too often when all of this was going on, I was like, this is literally what we're living, right? People are just blindly in this thing and they're just almost brainwashed,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, you just want to walk around to people and say, wake up, wake up and see what is going on. Like, take a step back just for a second, right? And I think that that's hopefully where we're getting is people are waking up.
I
and
think so.
they can see it and they're like, you know what? It's almost like the powers that be called wolf, right? They called wolf with an invisible wolf that was very scary, made out to be very scary to people, right?
Yeah.
And they believed it, right? Because they didn't want to be on the side of not believing it. Because if this invisible wolf was really what they were saying, it's very bad,
Right.
right? And I think that
Now it's the flu.
Yes, now it's the flu, but also during the time the flu went away, there was no flu, right? So it's interesting how that it comes full circle. But now it's like, well, where was the wolf? Did the wolf ever appear? Right? I don't know, man, and that's why it's okay to say, all right, maybe people got fooled, they did, right?
Yeah.
I think we all did to some certain extent.
Yeah.
And now take a step back and be like, you know what? Cool. Right?
I just hope people learn from this.
Yes. Well, that's the important thing. That's important. It's just like making a mistake in another area of life.
Yeah.
Right? You make a mistake, mistakes happen, right? And then you learn from and improve from making mistakes. And I think that could be, a lot. I mean, I'm not saying I've never made mistakes, man. Like you learn from them, you get better, you don't do it again, right? Like you can learn from these things and these experiences and I think that people are really, but also I think that we could flip it in a positive way and hopefully get away from the division that has happened or is they're still trying to have that happen and say, you know what, cool, man, like I'm not going to buy into that. I'm not going to be so absorbed. I'm not going to have this hate in my heart toward other people, right? Because ultimately it's only hurting you.
That's
right.
That's a fact.
Like if you and I know that both of us have had people that have done us wrong, whatever, but you forgive, right? Like even though it's tough, it's like you forgive them and move on because I don't want to wake up every day and say, well, I hate this person.